I always thought getting old meant slowing down. I never knew it also meant learning who truly stood beside you when your hands began to tremble. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and at 72, I've learned that the quietest houses can hold the loudest secrets. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? I love knowing how far these stories travel. The story begins on a foggy Tuesday morning in late October. The chill from the ocean rolled through my little town of Windermere, carrying with it that faint scent of salt and pine that always seeps into my curtains. I sat by the window in my old armchair, knitting a scarf I'd been working on for months, not for warmth, but for memory. Every thread reminded me of Peter, my late husband. It had been 4 years since he passed, but sometimes I still caught the echo of his footsteps in the hall. Then came Natalie, my only daughter, moving back into the house to help me out. Those were her exact words. She arrived with a suitcase in one hand and her phone in the other, her smile as polished as the silver pendant she wore around her neck. "Mum, you shouldn't be living alone anymore," she said, brushing past me as though the house already belonged to her. At first, I was grateful. I thought maybe it was God's way of easing the loneliness. But over the next few days, something in her tone, her routines, began to gnaw at me. She spoke softly on late-night calls, always stepping outside to the porch. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd laugh and say, "Just work, Mom." But Natalie didn't work anymore. Not since her husband, Julian, lost his job last spring. I tried to dismiss the unease. Told myself I was being paranoid, just an old woman missing her peace. Still, my instincts, the same ones that helped me raise a child alone after Peter's long hospital nights, whispered that something wasn't right. Then, the changes began. She started moving my things, rearranging furniture, replacing old frame photos with new decor, and quietly packing boxes of my books into the attic, just making space, she said. Space for what, I wondered. One evening, I heard the sound of keys jingling. Not mine, hers. I peeked through my slightly open door as she whispered into the phone again. "Yes, it's almost done," she said. "By next week, she won't even notice." The next morning, when I went to make tea, I noticed my checkbook missing from its usual drawer. My stomach sank. I asked Natalie if she'd seen it, and she smiled, that same too-sweet smile. "Oh, I locked it in the safe for you. You're always forgetting where things go, Mum." I wasn't forgetting, I was watching. That night, I couldn't sleep. The clock ticked louder than usual, the wind pushed against the shutters, and a faint light from under Natalie's door flickered until nearly 2 a.m. When I finally gathered the courage to peek, I saw her hunched over her laptop, scanning papers. Documents that looked eerily like my property deeds. My throat went dry. My daughter, my flesh and blood, was planning something under my own roof. And just as I stepped back, my old floorboard creaked beneath my foot, and Natalie's head snapped toward the door. Her eyes met mine through the darkness. She didn't smile this time. She simply whispered, "Couldn't sleep, Mom," as she slowly closed the laptop lid. What exactly was Natalie doing with those documents? And who was she talking to late at night? Eleanor's quiet life was about to unravel thread by thread, and the truth waiting inside that house would change everything. When I woke the next morning, Natalie was already in the kitchen, humming softly as she poured coffee. The same old floral robe I gave her years ago brushed against the counter as she turned to smile at me. But this time, I saw something else in that smile. A hint of control, like she already knew what I'd seen last night. "Morning, Mom," she said cheerfully. "I made your favorite, cinnamon toast." The smell should have comforted me. Instead, it felt like bait. I sat down slowly, studying her every move. My hands trembled as I lifted the cup, pretending to sip while my mind replayed the image of those property papers on her screen. Were they really mine? Or had my tired old eyes tricked me? "Sleep well?" she asked, glancing at me over her shoulder. I nodded. "You were up late?" Her lips curled slightly. "Just some emails. You know how work is." Work. She hadn't had steady work in nearly a year. After breakfast, she left to run errands, and the house fell into silence again. The kind that amplifies every clock tick and floor creak. I moved toward her room, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Every step felt like trespassing, but it was my house, my right. Her laptop sat open on the desk, still warm from use. My fingers hesitated above the touchpad before I finally pressed it. The screen blinked to life, a folder titled Estate Transition. Inside were scanned copies of legal documents, my property deed, my savings account statements, and even my medical reports. My name was there, but next to it, in a bold digital signature space, was another, Natalie Hayes. My vision blurred. My own daughter was preparing to take everything I had. I slammed the laptop shut just as I heard the front door open. Panic surged through me. I hurried back to the kitchen, pretending to sort mail, when she appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay, Mum?" she asked, placing her keys down. Her tone was light, but her eyes, they were sharp, searching. "Fine," I said, "just catching up on some letters." She smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. "You should rest. You've been forgetting things lately." That night, I couldn't stop thinking, the daughter I had raised alone, through scraped knees, first heartbreaks, and college dreams, was quietly rewriting my life behind my back. I needed someone to talk to, someone I could trust. So, I reached for the phone and dialed my old friend, Margaret Lawn, who lived across town. She was the only one who had known me since before Peter died. When she answered, I whispered everything. The late-night calls, the documents, the uneasy feeling. "Do you think I'm overreacting?" I asked, my voice shaking. There was a pause on the other end. Then Margaret said softly, "Eleanor, this sounds serious. You need to make copies of those documents. And whatever you do, don't confront her yet. Keep watching." Just as I was about to reply, a faint click interrupted the line. Then silence. "Margaret?" I said. No response. I pressed the phone to my ear, listening closely. What I heard next made my stomach twist. A slow, steady breathing sound. Coming not from the receiver, but from the other side of the house, I turned my head toward the hallway. Natalie stood there, phone in hand, staring at me. She smiled faintly and said, "Talking to someone, Mom?" And in that moment, I realized she had been listening the entire time. Eleanor's suspicion is no longer a feeling. It's proof. But now that Natalie knows her mother is on to her, the game inside that quiet house is about to turn deadly silent. The next morning felt heavier than usual. Even the sunlight seemed hesitant to enter the room, slanting through the curtains like cautious fingers. I sat at the dining table with my tea, staring at the faint steam rising, the same table where Natalie had eaten her breakfast just hours earlier. Only now, the space she filled felt threatening, calculated. Her words from last night echoed in my mind. "Talking to someone, Mom." The way she'd said it wasn't curious. It was knowing like a hunter who already sees her prey cornered. After she left for her afternoon meeting, I moved through the house with deliberate slowness. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I couldn't stop now. Something told me that if I didn't act soon, I might lose everything. Not just my home, but my freedom, maybe even my sanity. I began by checking the phone. The landline cable was slightly loosened, almost invisible unless you looked closely. My suspicions deepened. In my bedroom drawer, I found something even stranger, a small recording device hidden beneath my jewelry box. My fingers trembled as I held it. The red light flickered weakly, a sign it had been used recently. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My own daughter had been recording me. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my knees weak, trying to make sense of it all. Then memories flooded in. The first time Natalie had run away at 16, angry that I sold my late husband's old car. How she'd always said I never trusted her enough. Maybe I hadn't. Or maybe I had trusted her too much. My reflection in the vanity mirror looked older than I remembered. Tired eyes, a faint line of resolve forming between my brows. "You're not crazy," I whispered to myself. "You're being watched." That night, I called Margaret again, but the line didn't even ring this time. I knew then it wasn't a coincidence. Natalie had done something to the phone line. So I came up with a quiet plan, one she wouldn't see coming. I began writing my thoughts in an old leather notebook Peter had once gifted me. Every detail, every strange thing she said, every document I saw on that laptop. I recorded it all. Then I hid the notebook behind the loose panel in the pantry wall, a spot only Peter and I had known days past. Natalie grew bolder, taking phone calls in whispers, bringing strangers to the house for consultation, and rearranging the office where Peter's files used to be once. I saw her slip a sealed envelope into her purse and quickly hide it when she noticed me watching. One evening, as she was out running errands, I decided to check the office again. My pulse quickened when I found a half-open drawer. Inside was a folder labeled Transfer Authorization. The document inside bore my signature, or something that looked like it. My hand shook as I traced the ink. It wasn't mine, but it was close enough to fool anyone. Just then, I heard a car pull into the driveway. My heart leaped into my throat. I quickly tucked the folder beneath my cardigan and slipped into the hallway. Pretending to dust the shelves as the door opened, Natalie stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room with a strange tension. "Mom," she said slowly, "have you been in Dad's office again?" I turned to face her, forcing a calm smile. Why would I? Those papers mean nothing to me anymore. She held my gaze for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "Good, because soon they won't mean anything to you either." The chill in her voice froze me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, clutching Peter's photograph, whispering to it like an anchor. If you were here, you'd know what to do. But then, something odd caught my eye. Across the street, in the reflection of a neighbor's window, I saw a faint red light blinking from my living room bookshelf. I stood slowly, heart hammering. When I approached the shelf, I found a small black camera tucked between two old novels. Its lens pointed directly toward my chair, the chair I always sat in during the evenings, and just as I reached to unplug it, my phone buzzed on the table. A message flashed across the screen from an unknown number. "Careful what you touch, Mom. Some secrets aren't yours to uncover." Now Eleanor knows. She isn't just being watched, she's being controlled. But the question remains, who's really behind the plan? Her daughter, or someone far more dangerous hiding behind her? The next morning I woke before dawn. The house was silent, but I could feel the eyes on me. Invisible, patient, expectant. Natalie's words from last night haunted me. Some secrets aren't yours to uncover, but if there was one thing my years had taught me, it was this. When someone tells you not to look closer, that's exactly when you must. I made my tea, steadying my hands, and sat at the same table where this nightmare had begun. Across from me was the camera I had found, now unplugged, its tiny light dead. It was strange how something so small could change everything I thought I knew about my own child. I decided it was time to fight fire with fire. So, I waited until Natalie left for her usual appointment. I went to the office again, heart pounding, palms slick, and searched for that folder labeled Transfer Authorization. But it was gone. In its place, tucked beneath a stack of blank envelopes, was something else. A USB drive. For a long moment, I hesitated. Then I plugged it into Peter's old laptop. The screen blinked, and a video loaded, grainy, time-stamped just a few weeks ago. It was Natalie, sitting in this same office, talking to a man I didn't recognize. He was sharply dressed, mid-40s, confident. "Once it's transferred," Natalie said, "the house will be listed within 30 days. My mother won't even know what hit her. You'll get your cut." My throat went dry. My own daughter, selling the home her father built with his hands, behind my back. But then the man leaned forward, lowering his voice. "And the rest of her estate, The stocks, the pension. Natalie hesitated. I'll take care of that once the power of attorney is finalized. The video ended abruptly. I sat frozen, tears burning behind my eyes. My daughter, my little girl who once brought me flowers after every school play, was conspiring with a stranger to take everything from me. It wasn't about helping me, it was about replacing me. Hours later, when she came home, I watched her move through the house, confident, entitled, like she already owned it. She didn't notice that my expression had changed, that I wasn't the frightened old woman she thought I was. At dinner, I asked casually, "How was your meeting?" She looked up sharply, spoon mid-air. "What meeting?" "The one you have every afternoon," I said softly, stirring my soup. "You know, the ones where you discuss my future." Her spoon clattered against the bowl. "What are you talking about?" I met her eyes and smiled faintly. "You tell me, Natalie. Maybe about the new buyer? Or your business partner?" For a moment, she froze, then forced a laugh. "Mom, I think you're getting confused again." But her hand was trembling. "I might be old," I said quietly, "but I'm not blind, or deaf, or as powerless as you think." The silence between us stretched, thick and electric. Then, for the first time since she'd moved in, I saw something real flicker in her eyes. Fear. That night, I went to my hidden notebook and added every new detail. But as I was writing, I noticed something odd. The loose panel where I hid it had already been disturbed. Someone had found it. Panic rose in my chest. I ran my hand inside the gap. The notebook was gone. I turned around and saw Natalie standing in the doorway, holding it in her hand. Her face was unreadable. "So," she said slowly, stepping closer, "you've been keeping secrets too." Her tone wasn't angry. It was cold, eerily calm. "I had to," I whispered, "because you weren't telling me the truth." She smiled faintly, setting the notebook on the table. "You think you know everything, Mom, but you don't even know who I'm really working with." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Natalie tilted her head, that same calculating look in her eyes. "You really don't remember, do you? Dad wasn't the only one who had plans for this house." My breath caught. "What are you saying?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "This house doesn't just belong to you, Mum. There's another name on the deed, someone you haven't spoken to in 20 years. And before I could ask who, she slid a folded paper across the table. One with my late husband's signature beside a name I thought I'd buried long ago, a name that shouldn't exist anymore. Who was the mysterious co-owner of Eleanor's home? And why had Peter kept that secret from her? The truth is coming, and it's about to change everything she thought she knew about family, loyalty, and love. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the paper Natalie had slid across the table. The room felt smaller, the walls inching closer as I read the name beside my late husband's signature. Elaine Turner. My sister. My estranged sister. She'd vanished 2 decades ago after a bitter fight over our parents' inheritance. Peter had known how much it broke me, and now somehow her name was on the deed to my house. My husband, the man I trusted completely, had tied my life to the one person who once destroyed it. I looked up at Natalie. "You knew." She didn't deny it. "I found the papers in Dad's safe months ago," she said softly. "I reached out to Elaine. She told me everything." The air left my lungs. Everything? That you were the one who cut her out of the family estate, that you kept the last property, this house, for yourself. I shook my head in disbelief. "That's not true. She walked away. I begged her to stay, but she wanted the money, not family." Natalie's eyes flickered, doubt for just a moment, but then she hardened again. "Elaine said you'd say that. And she's been nothing but kind to me, Mom. She offered to help me secure the property before it goes through probate. She said it was the only way to protect our family's legacy." Protect. The word twisted inside me like a knife. "No, Natalie, she's using you." But my daughter didn't answer. She simply turned and walked out, the sound of her heels echoing down the hall like a slow drumbeat of betrayal. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I called an old friend of Peter's, our family lawyer, Mr. Lawson. He owed me a favor. When I told him about the deed, the USB, and Elaine, there was a long silence. "Eleanor," he said finally, "Peter made a joint ownership transfer years ago, but only conditionally. The moment Elaine tried to claim it without your consent, the deed would revert entirely to you. There's a legal safeguard, but we'll need proof that she's been trying to sell or transfer it." My pulse raced. I have that proof. That evening, I waited for Natalie to leave again. When the house went quiet, I stepped into her room. On her desk, next to her laptop, was an envelope, addressed to Elaine Turner. Inside were printed copies of the property transfer forms and a handwritten note from Natalie. "Once it's official, I'll move her to the care facility. She won't resist anymore." Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't stop moving. I took photos of everything and slipped the papers into my coat pocket. When Natalie came home, I was waiting in the living room. The house dimly lit, the fireplace crackling softly behind me. She stopped cold when she saw the papers in my hand. "You shouldn't have gone through my things," she said quietly. "And you shouldn't have betrayed your mother," I replied, my voice shaking. "Elaine's been lying to you, Natalie. She's trying to take what's left of me, and she's using you to do it." "She's not lying." Natalie's voice cracked. "She said you'd twist everything. She said..." "She said what?" I stepped closer. "That she loved you, that she wanted to protect you. She's manipulating you the same way she did me. You think she cares about you? She cares about this house, about control." Natalie's lip quivered, but her anger masked it. "You don't know her like I do." "No," I whispered. "You don't know her like I do." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then the doorbell rang. Sharp and sudden, slicing through the tension, Natalie turned, startled. "That must be her." "Elaine." I took a deep breath, feeling every beat of my heart echo in my chest. This was it. The confrontation I never thought I'd face again. I straightened my back and met my daughter's eyes. "Then let her in," I said calmly. "It's time we all told the truth." Natalie hesitated, then opened the door. And there she was, Elaine, older now, with the same sharp eyes that once looked at me across a lawyer's table instead of a dinner one. "Eleanor," she said smoothly, stepping into the house like she owned it, "you haven't changed." I smiled faintly. "Oh, I have. I'm not the woman you left crying in that courthouse." Elaine set her purse down and smiled coldly. "Good, because after tonight, you won't be the woman living here either." The door clicked shut behind her, and I realized the final battle for my home, my truth, and my family had just begun. What shocking move will Eleanor make to protect everything she's built? And will Natalie finally see who's really been pulling the strings? The final part will decide it all. The night Elaine stepped into my home, I thought I was about to lose everything. My house, my daughter, my peace. But what I didn't know was that sometimes silence can be your strongest weapon. I let her talk first. She came armed with charm, with stories polished over years of manipulation. She spoke of family unity, rightful inheritance, and making peace before it's too late. But this time, I didn't crumble. When she finished, I walked to the mantel and picked up the small wooden box Peter had carved for me years ago. Inside it were copies of every document, every letter, every piece of proof I'd found, including her emails to real estate agents trying to sell my house. "Funny," I said, placing the box gently on the table between us, "how your version of peace includes forging signatures and exploiting my daughter." Her face froze. Natalie's eyes darted between us. "What is she talking about?" I pressed play on my phone. The recording I'd made earlier that week filled the room. Elaine's voice, crisp and unmistakable. "Get the property transferred before she figures it out. Once she's in assisted living, it's over." The silence that followed was almost sacred. Natalie's hand flew to her mouth. You said she was confused, that she needed help. Elaine stood up abruptly, fury flickering in her eyes. You set me up. No, I said softly. You set yourself up. Mr. Lawson entered just then, right on cue. Elaine Turner, he said, holding up his phone. The police are on their way. Elaine's confidence dissolved. For the first time, she looked small, like the ghost of someone who'd already lost Natalie, turned to me, tears brimming in her eyes. Mom, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't. I touched her cheek gently. I know, sweetheart. You wanted to believe in family. You just trusted the wrong one. When the officers arrived, Elaine didn't fight. She just glanced back at me as they led her away, and for a moment, I saw the sister I once loved, the one I used to bake apple pies with on Sunday afternoons, and then she was gone. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows for the first time in weeks. The air felt lighter, as if the house itself had exhaled. Natalie brewed coffee and set a small vase of daisies on the kitchen counter. I'm sorry, she whispered. I smiled. Don't be. We all lose our way sometimes. What matters is that we find our way back. She nodded, eyes shining. Can I stay a few days? Just to help you for real this time? I laughed softly. Only if we make pancakes first. We did. And as we stood there, flipping pancakes and laughing over burnt edges, I realized that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's rebuilding with wisdom. Later, I walked into the garden Peter had planted years ago. The wind carried the scent of jasmine. The same flowers he used to tuck behind my ear. I knelt, ran my fingers through the soil, and felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Life had taken me through storms, but it hadn't taken my strength. I'd faced betrayal, deception, and loss. But in the end, truth had its quiet victory. I looked back at the house, the windows open, the curtains dancing with the breeze, my daughter humming softly inside. This home was more than walls and memories. It was proof that even when love falters, it can find its way back through honesty and courage. I smiled and whispered to the wind, "Thank you, Peter. We're safe now." The sunlight warmed my face. Somewhere a bird sang, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. If you were in Eleanor's place, would you have forgiven Natalie, or would you have walked away? Share your thoughts below. Like, follow, and stay tuned for more emotional life stories, where truth, love, and courage always find their way home.